You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks, CLNS's official daily fantasy app. Download it and put in the code CLNS and they'll match your deposit 100% up to $100. Today we have a special episode. Today, of course, it's hello, it's your guy Pat Lane with my guy Matt St. Jean. We're very excited to bring on a guy that we haven't had on in a while. Love this guy. One of my favorite guys. He's now at The Ringer, works at Spotify as well, formerly at PFF. It's Austin Gayle, killing it over there. How we doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course. I'm tripping all over myself here trying to introduce you, but here we are. So let's get right into this offseason. It's been a wild offseason with a whole bunch of things going on. First up for AFC teams and certainly AFC East teams is Stefon Diggs, no longer in the AFC East, traded out, and they didn't really get a ton back for him, I don't think. What's your opinion? What's your take on that trade, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the Bills side, I think all of the reporting suggests that it was a relationship that run its course, very similar to the relationship that he had with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that them not getting as much as maybe people expected with Stefon Diggs and how good he was, I think is connected to a handful of things, right? I think that if the reporting is loud when I'm hearing it, it's probably even louder inside the confines of the NFL, right? Where the league knows where the Bills are with Stefon Diggs. The league knows, and specifically the league knows where Stefon Diggs and his agent are with the Buffalo Bills. So some of that leverage is lost as that rumor mill really churns at the combine and at these other events where you're really hearing where that Diggs relationship is and how much maybe he's looking to leave or looking to for a new contract. And I think that brings you to the Texans situation, right? And why did the Texans trade for Stefon Diggs, that second rounder that they got from the Minnesota Vikings in their trade out of the first round, and then go from having 3 years of cost-controlled Stefon Diggs to having just 1 year of cost-controlled Diggs? And you see the Adam Schefter reporting that Stefon Diggs is now going to be motivated on and off the field, which is just like, has that ever happened ever? We trade a potential top 50 pick. The Minnesota Vikings, there's only 3 teams in the NFL in 2024 that have a lower win total than the Vikings. Whoever they pick at quarterback, this is not expected to be a team that's going to be pursuing the playoffs. This is a top 50 pick that you're trading for a receiver that is coming in that isn't coming back next year. Like, it's not like it is a 1-year rental for a routinely disgruntled player who just turned 30 and is coming off the worst 10-game stretch of his career. Why do you do that? What's the reason for that? I think it's a hope that positioning him in this way will get a really good year out of him, right? He is going to be motivated on and off the field. He is going to be the wide receiver 1 in this Houston Texans offense. He goes for 1,400 yards, 10-plus touchdowns. The Texans make the AFC Championship. Hell, they go to the Super Bowl. That is the hope. That is the dream of dreams, right? That's Caserio saying this is the peak of outcomes. Probably a higher percentage outcome is that this player that really struggled over the second half of last season and has routinely been disgruntled on and off the field. The second things don't go well, or say an injury comes up or age decline factors in, this isn't going to be maybe that dream that Caserio is dreaming for Stefon Diggs. So I worry, right? Where this becomes a bad move, or no, a not so great move, is Stefon Diggs doesn't play to the caliber that they expect. Right. And then he just leaves and signs with the Chiefs next year. Right. Or signs with whoever next year on this like multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract. That's didn't work. Bad bet. Where this really sucks is Bobby Slowick, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Those are the foundation of the franchise. If adding Stefon Diggs on this little 1-year rental into the locker room, which he's not handled a single NFL locker room well yet, if that leads to any backslide in development for, say, Collins or, say, Stroud, obviously, and then Tank Dell, and then factor in Bobby Slowick, who after his first year in Houston is getting head coaching interviews, if if things aren't going well, is Diggs going to say, hey, the offense goes through me, pal? Is that the kind of stranglehold he has on this team? He's there for 1 year. I don't know. I guess I do have questions. I have questions about it. I think it's an interesting risk from the Houston Texans that in a vacuum, sure, it's a short-term risk. It's only 1 year. But part of me is also I kind of want to see Nico Collins getting these targets as the top receiver in the offense. I want Tank Dell, when he comes back from injury, to be a real part of this offense. I want Stroud not to be thinking about how do I get Diggs the ball, but how he's thinking about how to win. I want Slowick, who had one of the lowest early down pass rates in the league and still found ways to be successful offensively, not to rethink his plan because you brought in a diva. And diva, I know, has a weird connotation. I think my take on diva is every receiver in the NFL, if you want to be good, you have to be a diva. You have to want the ball, right? But he is still going to be someone who really wants the ball. His yards per game last year over the second half of the season was the second biggest in the NFL. You know who was first? A.J. Brown. Another guy that when he is not getting the football, he's not super thrilled. I think that's going to be a big factor in Houston.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting about this is to see Buffalo, let Gabe Davis walk out the door, presumably knowing that a move like this is gonna be made at some point, and being willing to let Gabe Davis walk, and being willing to eat the $31 million in dead cap and not get back anything this year for Stefon Diggs, and they're giving up draft picks this year as part of this, I believe. Day 3.
Yeah, I think that's surprising.
They don't get a return on this until next year, unless, of course, they package that second round pick as part of a trade, which I think is totally possible in this year's draft. But for them when you combine the production, the locker room stuff, and what the Bills are willing to eat to move on from him, it paints a worrying picture. But then I look at Houston, and I do like the fit a lot. Like Nico Collins as the X, Stefon Diggs as the Z, Tank Dell in the slot. You got a good tight end. You got a quarterback. If you can manage the egos for one season, that can be the best offensive group. Obviously, there's the quarterback part of it, but as a group, that can be the best offensive group in the AFC. So really high risk, not high risk, high reward. For the Texans, you're giving away an extra second round pick, which obviously you would like to have that, but I don't hate cashing it in. But this also does seem like one team saying we don't really want Stefon Diggs anymore, and the other team is saying, I guess we'll take him for a year if we don't have to give up anything this year. And I think the loser in this to me is Stefon Diggs, because if he doesn't play well this year, he's going to be a 32-year-old wide receiver who's burned his way through 3 locker rooms coming off of back-to-back disappointing seasons. Guys like that do not make a lot of money in the NFL.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, you know what?
Go ahead.
It's just one video that I always come back to, and it's a stupid video. And I don't know if anyone's even seen it before, but it's one of those stupid social media videos or whatever. But this is back when Diggs was on the Vikings.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
Which guy in the locker room would you never let date your sister, right? And every single guy was like, Stefon Diggs is coming anywhere near my sister. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my. And it's funny. They're laughing about it and this and that. And then you see how he kind of sours in that locker room. Then you see how he kind of sours in Buffalo's locker room. And you're like, maybe there's something else to that. Not just, you know what I mean? So, and obviously could mean nothing, but it's just one of those funny things that in the context of it, you're like, huh, that's interesting that, that they had that to say about him,
My pushback on no pushback on it being high reward, right? This works out. This thing's going to be insane. There's a chance that they win the Super Bowl. Stefon Diggs goes for 1,800 yards. C.J. Stroud changes his last name to Diggs. This whole thing could go just roses and candy. It could be a goddamn rainbow in Houston. I don't think that's the highest percentage range of outcome. I don't know if that's the highest percentage outcome just because of where he is in his age and also just what we saw most recently from Stefon Diggs and the fact that it is a 1-year rental, right? He is in the locker room and then he's gone. I don't know necessarily with Nico Collins also entering a contract year if the Texans are positioning themselves to sign both Collins and Diggs to the contracts that they're probably expecting after this season. So it is this 1-year rental where you're just sending, to quote you, a guy you don't want hanging out with your sister into the locker room and then pulling him back out. That could be that could be a little scary, right? That guy could come in and maybe wreak some havoc. My take is, and this is where I feel like I officially stand, where were they at with T. Higgins? right? Is there an opportunity to maybe bid a little higher on Calvin Ridley? Is there an opportunity to look at? I don't know. Like, why is Diggs the risk that they wanted to take? Maybe they feel he's a better player, or maybe they view him at a discount because the Buffalo Bills stuff and all that. Like, I think there's a lot of that there. I am very much looking forward to how it pans out because I think that there's, no matter what, it's going to be fireworks. Because you mentioned that biggest loser in this could be Diggs. He doesn't play well, doesn't get the contract he's looking for. If Diggs is the loser in this, he's going to make the Texans a loser too. You know what I mean? Because he there's 2 games in a row where he gets less than 4 targets. We're getting to Twitter real quick, and there's going to be a couple tweets here and there, and there's going to be some here and there, and that I think is a distraction that the Texans objectively did not have last year. And I know that's the risk in this, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying blah blah blah. I'm just saying that's a part of this.
Right.
So the Texans are 100% betting on their own culture here, which in some ways, this is a Patriots-esque move. It's definitely not 1-to-1, but like when the Patriots traded for Randy Moss, he was a guy who'd burned his way through a couple locker rooms and was 30 and not coming off his best season. And they got him for a day 3 pick because nobody really wanted him at that point. They weren't sure what he could do. And I'm not saying Stefon Diggs is Randy Moss, but also I think you see good franchises will often take bets like this because if Diggs is a hit, he's worth a first-round pick. Like if it was prime Stefon Diggs, you'd be trading a first-round pick this year to go get him. And if you can get him for a second-round pick next year instead, and you can get him to buy into the culture and fit in with everything else, like you can get incredible value on that. And I think they're basically saying, if this goes, belly up and it doesn't fit, we still like the guys we have on offense. And if Diggs doesn't like it, he can ride the bench. It's 1 year. He'll get out of here after that, and he's going to take a bad contract. So he knows that if he wants to go get that money, he's got to buy in to what we're doing. He has to buy into whatever role it's going to be in this offense. I like the risk for the Texans, but you're betting on a young locker room culture being able to withstand potentially somebody who can be a cancer. And that's
I like viewing it as a bet on your culture. I think that's a well said piece. I think it is a bet on your culture. You're saying, hey, we have this ability to bring someone like this in and win with them, even if everyone in the room, including him, knows he's not going to be here next year, and everyone including him knows that there's been some pains in other locker rooms. So I think it is a bet on the culture. It's a bet on D'Amico Ryans. It's a bet on CJ Stroud. It's a bet on all those guys. So I think it's not necessarily a bet on Stefon Diggs. Diggs is going to Diggs, right? It's going to be he does what he wants when he wants. I think it's really a bet on the support system you can put him in place.
That's a great call. It's a great call. Do you think there's any chance? Well, I shouldn't say any chance. I feel like the likelihood now that the Bills go after, whether it's Ayuk or, T. Higgins or whatever, I just feel like the likelihood of them going after one of those guys goes up exponentially. You're drafting at 28. It's not like you're going to get one of these top flight wide receivers. Would you move 28 and something else, whether it's a day 3 pick or even a late 3rd round pick, to the Niners or the Bengals to grab one of those guys?
I think that the answer for Ayuk is yes, and I'm like having the best time ever, and maybe like just celebrating for the rest of the offseason. For Higgins, I don't know. I don't even know if the Bengals and the Bills will ever make that trade, but I think it's harder for me with Higgins. I think it's yes or 3 bags full with Brandon Ayuk. I think what's more likely is that they go chase a receiver in the 1st round. Maybe make a slight trade up, right? Maybe jump up a couple spots to go get a guy. Just in addition to them needing receiver talent, they need some cheap receiver talent. They need some guys that don't need these monster behemoth contracts as they continue to navigate the Josh Allen stuff. I'm pretty sure almost a quarter of their cap space this year is going to players not even on the team. Like, they need to find a way out of what has been like, they shot the moon. They fell just short, maybe 13 seconds short 1 year, another couple points short the next year. I think now they're going to just reset. That's why you mentioned, like, they don't even get a draft pick this year. They don't want the Texans draft pick anyway, because obviously they're going to be a more competitive team. They wanted that extra top 50 pick. But the other piece of it too is that they're looking to reset and try and throw their weight around next offseason to bring in some new talent, to bring in some new guys. I also think it could mean more of the offense is funneled through James Cook, more of the offense is funneled through Dalton Kincaid. That I think will be interesting to see how Brady handles that too.
When I see a 2nd rounder being involved in this too, my ears perk up, because that's I think what you'd have to give up to move up to like Brian Thomas Jr. range in this draft. And I don't know if they make that move, but they traded up for Dalton Kincaid last year. They're not against moving up to go get a weapon that they really like and get 2 second-round picks next year. I wouldn't be shocked if, one of those is on the market to be packaged to move up this year to go get a receiver. Or I don't think they're going to be moving up for a tight end in this year's draft, but it gives them the flexibility to move around to go get some cheap targets for Josh Allen.
I think Brian Thomas Jr. is the one that I see most commonly mocked to the Bills right now in terms of in a trade-up scenario, going up and getting what I think a lot of people view as the wide receiver 4 in this class. I would much prefer, and we're getting into the draft analysis now, maybe this is the natural segue, but I would much prefer Brian Thomas Jr. to A.D. Mitchell in terms of the tall, skinny, fast, vertical threats in this class. I think Ladd McConkey is someone I kind of like too, and I don't even know necessarily if they have to trade up for him. I do think that they just need a guy who can win on the outside and get open. I don't know necessarily if they need this deep vertical threat. I want to see them hit some twos. I want some mid-range jumper guys. Shakir, I think, can obviously win a lot of the short and intermediate range, but I want to see some guys who can win physically, win on the outside, and get these like 10 to 15, 20-yard strikes that they kind of need.
Yeah. I can tell you, if the Bills are looking for that guy, they can send that second-round pick over to New England for Tyquan Thornton any day.
Yes, that's it. That's who they're looking for.
Yeah,
I think that's
that
what
makes
we're
sense.
really getting into.
All right, let's get into. You did mention it. We are gonna do a live mock with Austin. Wanted to just run through my mock just quickly, and so for those listeners out there, Austin doesn't know this, but for those listeners out there, Matt and I have been alternating with mock drafts. It was every 2 weeks, and now that April is here, it's every week. This is mock draft 4.0 for me, and I make it a point to never draft the same player twice. It's always different players in every single draft. And so, so what they do here at 3 is they trade down from 3 to 6. The Giants move up from 6 and give up also their 2025 first-round pick as well. Patriots take Joe Alt at 6. Then in the second, they take Cooper DeJean, who I think is probably going to end up being a safety in the NFL. Javon Baker in the third, who I will see about that one, but Javon Baker in the third. Dominic Pooney for that offensive line depth in the fourth. Oh, Jordan Travis. I want to talk to you about Jordan Travis because I think I have Jordan Travis in the 5th round. Tip Raymond from Illinois in the actually a pair of Illinois pass catchers, Tip Raymond and Casey Washington. Although calling Tip Raymond a pass catcher is generous, I would say. And then Khalil Duke from Kansas State in the 7th round. So we could just start at I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but first round, how do you feel about that trade down to 6 and drafting Joe Alt there at 6?
I'm on the record saying that if Jaden Daniels is there at 3 for the Pats, that I would prefer a trade down as an analyst, right? As an evaluator of the quarterback talent in this class. I'm not there with Daniels. And if I'm going to get a hot and nasty call from either the Giants in this case, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Vikings, whoever's looking to come up, I'm taking that in a heartbeat. I'm taking highest bidder too. I think that Jaden Daniels is going to need a situation where he does not need to be the hero early on. I also think he's going to need a situation where the expectations aren't all that high and he's not what I say, I don't think you can make a quarterback starting him his first year, but I think you can break one. And I think putting him in a situation with the Patriots offensive line, with that receiving core, I just don't know if the extra attention around him in his first year, because he'd obviously be starting in his first year, will be all that healthy for his development, right? And you're also working with Alex Van Pelt, who did not call plays in Cleveland. You're evaluating a first-year quarterback who is older, transferred out of Arizona State, has his limitations. The person who likes Jaden Daniels the most will say he has limitations, right? Obviously, there's going to be things he needs to work on the next level. You're going to be evaluating him inside of a roster that is bottom 5 in the NFL, maybe worse. I mean, you guys are the Pats guys. Where do you guys stand on this thing? Not a great place to be, right? Specifically offensively. And then you have a play caller that, yes, obviously has experience with working as an offensive coordinator in Cleveland, but he wasn't calling the plays. That was Stefanski calling plays. Evaluating all those at the same time where you're still trying to bake on Tyquan Thornton figuring it out. And it just doesn't – I don't like it. And also Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo how many bites of the apple do you get in terms of bringing in a quarterback, right? Especially a top 5 one. You don't get a lot. So if you're taking this swing, you better be confident. And I think even if he's a sports car, you're bringing him into a garage that's on fire. I don't know necessarily if it's that good of an idea to take this swing now. And everyone's like, next year's quarterback class sucks. What? You have to take one now, blah, blah, blah. This team, in my opinion, who is positioned right now in 2025 to have more cap space than any team in the league by a significant margin, why isn't this a team that's saying, I'd rather pass on Jaden Daniels, take the extra capital I'm getting in this trade-up team, and then just for a chance at Dak Prescott next year. I'm not saying I can get him. I'm not saying I can lure him. I'm not saying that the roster is going to be in place where Dak even wants to come within 6 feet of this thing. But I'd rather have a 15% chance at Dak than 100% chance of here having Daniels in the building with this roster and then trying to develop him on the fly. Oftentimes when you're trying to develop these quarterbacks on the fly, you limit them. Like I said, you could break them. I don't know, man. I keep coming back to that. If it's May there at 3, I think I sprint the card in. I like May more as a prospect. But even then, there is this question of, can May develop functionally with this roster and with this offense? I think it's a real question you have to ask.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned like the Dak thing. This offense, I think it's got a lot of nice complementary pieces. Like Hunter Henry can be a nice like depth option in an offense, and we've seen stuff from Pop Douglas, and Kendrick Bourne can be your wide receiver 3, and Michael Onwenu is a decent right tackle, but they need a wide receiver 1, they need a franchise tackle, and they need a little bit more in other places in the offense to round it out. And I think if you can fix one of those and go into next offseason with multiple first-round picks and the chance to sign Dak Prescott, or we don't know what the quarterback's going to look like in the draft. We say that they don't look good now. We don't know what that's going to look like in 12 months.
Right.
Gives you a lot of options if you're New England. So,
and that's the way I approach it. I have serious concerns about whether Daniels is going to be that guy. He might be, but I just don't see it. And so that's my biggest concern with him. I feel like the sky's the limit with him. Now, he may not ever hit that, but I feel like if you have the opportunity to take that guy, you have to take it. If that means he sits for a year, then he sits for a year. Like, I'm okay with him sitting for a year if it means that we're going to be able to try to develop him. But that's the way I look at it. And so, and we'll see, right? I mean, of course, there's no way to know. But and I think the Dak thing is an interesting conversation, because if you build up this offense, if the offensive line gets to where you want it to be, where you need it to be, and you can draft a wide receiver that hits this year, and then you have, maybe a decently early pick again next year, and you can draft a wide receiver that might be an opportunity for you to sign someone like Dak next year, and it makes you competitive. Are you going to win the Super Bowl? No. Mm-hmm. But I can see it at least where you can be competitive, because everyone's like, it's so funny when I talk about it and people are like, you want to be the Cowboys and you want to be this, and I'm like, the Cowboys are in the playoffs every year. They haven't been able to get over the hump, but they're in the playoffs literally every year. I'd rather be in their situation than the Browns or the Jaguars or whatever. They're in a situation where they're competitive every year. I'm okay with that,
I want to jump in here for a second because we're doing the QB discussion. Austin, where do you land on JJ McCarthy?
I am kind of shocked by how much he's been propelled up in the pre-draft process. I think that I would be really, really surprised if he is the QB2 or QB3 in this class. If he is drafted ahead of May, hell, ahead of Jaden Daniels even, I do think that's a little rich, especially, going back to his tape at Michigan. I do not feel the arm talent is what some people say it is. I don't know necessarily if he is this monster downfield bazooka off-platform type of thrower that what you see obviously from a Caleb Williams, right? And the other piece of this is, yes, he's accurate. Yes, he got better in Michigan's offense over time. Then why weren't they throwing the ball on 3rd and 6? You know what I mean? That's the question I continue to have is, why did they so much rather lean on the offensive line, so much rather lean on running the football than JJ McCarthy being the guy that has to put the cape on, right? And that I think concerns me a little bit too. Is he young? Could he get better? Is this someone that if Minnesota trades up for him and drafts him could be honestly the most productive rookie in year one? Absolutely. I actually believe that. Do I think I'm ever scratching the ceiling with JJ McCarthy? I doubt it, right? I don't know necessarily if in his range of outcomes is a QB 12 or better in this league, right? I think that he could have some Goff-like seasons, right? Specifically the ones he's had more recently with the Lions, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be looking at him who has to carry the team in late January, early Feb. And like I personally, and you mentioned, I'd much rather be a team that's in the playoffs every year. I just want to be competitive.
Right.
There are a lot of teams that feel that way, right? There's a lot of GMs that feel that way, coaches that feel that way. It's a keep your job type of league, right? Like it's where there isn't this so much of this additional incentive in winning the Super Bowl that the fans think there is. It's like we are looking to be competitive every year. We're looking to win games every year. Sure. Do we want a Super Bowl? Yes. Do we want to win the playoffs? Yes. But it's more important to us that we are winning 9, 10, 11 games every year and staying here than it is necessarily than bottoming out and taking these risks that put us in this hole. You think about the Steelers, right? I know that more recently, some people have been having questions about Mike Tomlin and when's the last time the Steelers have won a playoff game and some of those things. But the reason his job security is so firm is he's had the opportunity to continually win games. Like he just continually keeps the Steelers in the mix, regardless of who the quarterback has been, even after Big Ben and when Big Ben was falling off. And the other piece of this too, the benefit of that is that you are given this opportunity to establish a legitimate culture, right? And like obviously the best examples of that are Belichickian eras where you're winning the Super Bowl and you have carte blanche to create the culture you want, create the roster that you want. I think the Steelers and specifically Mike Tomlin have been able to do that because he says, no matter what, I'm going to win. Now, is that everything? No. Do fans expect more? Yes. I think with JJ McCarthy, he's someone that if I'm trading up future draft capital, say the Minnesota Vikings come up to 4 and I have to trade up a future first, say an additional third or a second, or say they're going number 23 overall pick and a second or something along those lines, whatever it is to have to go up.
Yeah.
The fact that you're saying out loud that I'm spending 2 first rounders and a second rounder on JJ McCarthy, those expectations for him are a little rich. And I think that it's just, you're not getting that value in return, even as important as the quarterback position is. I just don't think JJ McCarthy is going to give you that kind of value.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And look, I think he's okay, but I'm not that sold on him. He could be good, but I don't know. So I will say one of the guys I was really happy with, and one of the reasons why I like to go through and draft a different guy with every pick is because, I find these, late round guys, these 5th, 6th, 7th round players that I think are overlooked. And of course they all have warts, right? But then the question becomes, who can succeed even with those warts, and what are those warts and why are they down there? Right. So like, I really like Tip Raymond. He's a blocker, but he has high-end athleticism that could theoretically work himself into a tight end at some point. I don't know if he's ever going to actually get there, but like, it's an interesting guy,
Yeah.
Casey Washington is a guy that, he had 50 catches last year, but he's not, he wasn't showcased in that offense. It wasn't a great offense last year. So like, could he be a guy that goes late, right? And ends up looking pretty good at a 39.5-inch vertical, a 10.7 broad jump, like, decently explosive guy, ran a 4.46 40, like not the fastest guy in the world, but like decently explosive. And then I like the Khalid Duke, who from Kansas State, who's just like a pass rusher, but he's a little undersized or whatever. But like, it's one of those things where it's like he already has a really strong spin move. If he can develop a counter off that spin move, that's a guy that could, if you have those traits, which he does have those explosive traits. You watch some of the plays on film, you're like, holy crap, that dude. But then he's undersized. All right, well, but if he already has one move that's NFL ready, I think his spin move is NFL ready. Well, now he's got to get a counter off that, and he's got to get a counter off that, and he's got to be able to do other things. So he's got to be able to build things in. But it's interesting to look at it and think like, okay, if that guy can build 1 or 2 more things, he has a chance to make an impact. And that's why I like drafting the different guys, because there's so many guys in the draft, and then you never know, where 1 or 2 of those guys might actually hit,
I do think day three philosophy is something that I've talked a lot about in the years that I've covered the draft, and I think every team obviously has a different philosophy. Some people, some teams are prioritizing high end athleticism with off field warts or off field concerns, and I think
Mhm.
the other teams are looking for hard hat, lunch pail types that may never be a starter on either side of the ball, but can be these kinds of special teams contributors. I remember back to like Tyler Matakevich coming out of Temple. I'm like, man, I don't care where this guy goes. He's going to be someone that is going to be on your team for 10 years. I think he's still playing in the league, some special team or somewhere. Like, I think that you can
Yeah.
balance that. There's also balance, right? You don't have to go all. I remember
Right.
Preston Williams coming out of Colorado State. I think he went in the 4th or 5th round. He had some off-field stuff that I think people were concerned with and transferred to multiple schools. But like the athlete, the bet you're making on the athlete is crazy. I think you have to balance the bets that you're making and bring these guys in with a plan, man. These guys, it feels kind of stupid, but like they're human beings, right? Like what Preston Williams needs is to reach his even just 75th percentile of his potential is a lot different than what a Matakevich needs or what all these other guys
Correct.
need. And I think that's where some of this drafting process too, where you win on day three, in my opinion, is your development, less so like your identification. I think you need to bring guys in that have an opportunity on the scouting team, an opportunity in pursuing some type of special teams role, because it's so easy for these guys to fade into the background. If they have, this person needs X, Y, and Z in order to improve at the next level and actually secure a spot. Do you have a coach who's willing to commit the time necessary to improve X, Y, and Z? Do you have a dietitian or a work strength? One of the first conversations that John Gruden and Mike Mayock had with Max Crosby when he was drafted at 4th round of Eastern Michigan was, you need to add some weight. They immediately added weight. Like immediately was a big part of the offseason was him building strength, him adding weight. And now over time, obviously he's developed into one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. That, in my opinion, is an example of saying this guy's not done yet, but we think he can be great and we're going to make it happen. You have to make your day three picks work. Obviously, there's outliers and some guys find it and some guys don't. Stefon Diggs, was a 4th, 5th rounder. I think some guys, it's all a different case. For me, when you're drafting guys, it's oftentimes about the teams that hit on day three guys are ones who have stable coaching staffs, good culture, all that kind of stuff. That's where really these guys shine.
That's a great point.
And that's something the Rams have done well too, is finding day guys who just fit their scheme or can be role players. Like and it's a lot easier when you have Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, and all you're looking for is, let's get a guy who can play off of them. But knowing what your defense needs or what your offense needs and knowing what skill sets it needs and finding a guy on day three who, he's not good at all of these different things, but he can do this one thing and we can plug him in and that'll get him on the field. And if he develops the other stuff, great. And if he doesn't, he still has a role. He still can make an impact on the team. That's where I think on day three, you can find blocking tight ends who can get reps on the field right away and also get on special teams. And that gives them opportunities to run routes and get on the field and make the roster. I think that's where the Patriots for a long time were good with just drafting safeties. So if you're a safety, well, you're fast and you can tackle and you can play special teams and you can be part of a team unit where your smartness oftentimes matters more than your athletic traits, and we can coach you up and you can be at least a backup on defense. And if you turn it into something more, great. But this is your avenue to make the roster.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. I had where is it? Oh, I lost it. Oh, Darnell said it. It was the worst mock draft he's heard so far. So there you go. There you go. Thanks, Darnell.
That's how you've made it.
That's right, baby.
I was reading the comments on that, and I found one that said, no offense, but if the Patriots go left tackle, corner to kick it off, I'll have to consider self-immolation in the parking lot of Gillette Stadium. And a reply to that said, I think, quote, Pat Lane is actually an AI bot programmed to make the most outrageous, controversial statements / produce the best clickbait content. So,
I mean, hey, I appreciate that. No.
Good example too, though, of what fans want, right? And I think the Patriots organization is well aware that the Pats fans are not interested in not bringing in a talent at quarterback, not trying that. And I think ownership is probably well aware of that as well, right? Like even if the value for a trade back is X, it's like, dude, I want to win games next year. I want to bring in something exciting. I want butts and seats and all that kind of stuff. That's where I've talked a lot about this in previous years, but I think we overrate what the goals are for every team. You know, it's not to win the Super Bowl, right? A lot of the times it's not. Obviously, that's what it is on paper. And I feel like anytime any player joins a new team, they're like, I'm here to win the Super Bowl. It's not always the case, right? You know, you're oftentimes making decisions that are a lot more short term. Why? Average head coach in the NFL is what, there for 3 years right now? It's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It's a whole different ballgame, right? There's not job security that you expect.
Right.
Well, and that's where I think, Elliott Wolf could find himself in a real pickle here shortly as well, because if ownership's expectation is we need butts in the seats, we need a quarterback right now to make that happen, and we're going to go from there. If Elliott Wolf doesn't necessarily like the quarterbacks, but he feels like I got to do this, you draft the wrong quarterback, you're going to get fired 9 times out of 10. That's life in the NFL. And if you're looking at a position where he might be, having to pick a quarterback he doesn't necessarily like, with scouts he didn't get to hire, from pressure from an owner whose motive isn't to win, all to get fired in 3 or 4 years. And that is how a lot of the poorly run organizations in the NFL have been. I think one of the key tenets is to have an owner that is patient. They can take a year of meh football for the cause of long-term strategy. And I don't think in New England, I don't think we really have a pulse on what this is going to look like. We all know what Robert Kraft wants is a nice new quarterback. We don't know if Robert Kraft is going to interfere to make sure that happens this year.
Yeah. My biggest concern is exactly what you said, Matt, is that Jonathan Kraft or Robert Kraft look at it and say, we need a quarterback no matter what. And, left tackle isn't sexy, and I don't want to take a tackle. I don't care what the situation is. I'm not taking a tackle in the first round. I don't care where we are. We want to move back to 6, and this guy's on the board, and we think he's great, and he can greatly improve the team. I don't care, because he's not. He doesn't make the team more fun to watch because he plays offensive line, right? And
look at the Panthers situation with David Tepper. I mean, he's like, I'm trading to the number 1 overall pick in the draft because I'm telling you to go get the best quarterback in this class. Go evaluate him, go draft him. Now, there's also some conversation about how much the Tepper play a role in, liking Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud. I think a lot of that we still don't necessarily know, but it's a good example of an owner showing a lack of maybe not a lack of patience, because there were some years where Tepper's there and he's not trying to force anything, but maybe just ends up getting to a point where he reaches a boiling point, right? Where he's like, I got to go make a play. And now they find themselves literally giving Caleb Williams to the Bears, right? And that I think is how some of these short-term decision-making can lead to the GM in Carolina not there anymore, and coach is gone. That I think the short-term decision-making just leads to more short-term decision-making. Eventually you have to put together a plan. Yeah,
I agree. All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do a 7-round mock with you, Austin. We're gonna fly through it. Maybe not fly through it. We're going to talk about it. We've already hit on a ton of the quarterbacks already, so I think that conversation in the first round is going to be pretty quick, and so we'll kind of see what happens at 2. We got to take a quick break first, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with a live 7-round mock draft with Austin Gayle.
Prize Picks is America's #1 sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Now get in on the playoff action. Win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in just a few taps. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make a pick and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Jason Tatum to dish out more than 5 assists and for his teammate Jaylen Brown to have more than 22.5 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit matchup to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
All right. We're back. Okay. So let's get into this. This little mock draft here. And so I think we're all on the same page here at 3, right? I think, Matt, you're on the same page with me, right? That if Drake May goes number 2, we're trading out.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. May, yes. Daniels, no. At 3.
And Austin, I will let you choose, sir. If you would like to, even if May is on the board, if you would like to trade out, I'd be totally fine with that as well. So let's see what happens, and then you can make the call there at number 3.
I'm gonna get this thing running. May is available. I'm running the PFF mock right now. We got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels as the first 2 off the board. Austin, what are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, I think you take Drake May. I think that you also send a letter to Adam Peters, and it's a thank you letter, right? Where maybe your most expensive one. It could be a box of chocolates as well, some flowers. I don't know. I think that you definitely have to show some love to Washington giving you Drake May. I think that also you draft him with the expectation. I think one of you said this already. Not that he doesn't have to start, right? And you could say it's okay that if Drake May uses this year to get better. And when we're deploying him in situations where we feel like he's going to create good habits, not bad habits, right? Where reacting quickly to pressure, forcing the football to X receiver, Y receiver, struggling to create good habits as a leader, create good habits as a passer from the pocket, outside of the pocket, as a decision maker, starts with being put in a good situation, and also starts with not having great expectations, right? So you ever typed on a keyboard before? Every time you type on a keyboard, you make some mistakes, right? You ever done it with someone behind you, like right behind you? You make a little bit more, right? It's the easiest thing. You know how to do it. I know how to type a keyboard with my eyes closed, but if someone's behind you, you might make a couple more mistakes. That is exactly what's happening when you start right away and everyone has this expectation for you to do good, right? Versus, Jordan Love coming when he came in, or even Justin Herbert coming when he came in, like a couple weeks into the season. And after Tyrod Taylor gets punctured in the lung, you come in with this expectation that it's like, hey, you don't have to change this over. You weren't starting to start the season. You can pick this up as you go. You need to find a way to create a space where Drake May does not feel like someone's behind him on the keyboard and he can actually just play freely. If you think he can do that from week 1, you do that. And that obviously you evaluate through training camp and through the preseason. But if you get into the season and you still feel like he's not going to be a good creating these good habits, man, way better to wait a little bit and put him into the lineup, either towards the end of this season or even the start of next season.
I couldn't agree more. Sit him.
You could put him on that 2016 Jared Goff plan and let him play in the back half of the season when it's already over.
Or just hire the Chargers guy and have him puncture Jacoby's lung halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everybody do that? All right, so Drake made the pick at 3 or at 34. The top 5 on the board, according to PFF, are Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jackson Powers Johnson, Tyler Nubin, Peyton Wilson, and Zach Frazier. Some other notable names: wide receivers, Ladd McConkey is on the board, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Jermaine Burton, Keon Coleman, all there. Kingsley Suamataia is, I believe, the top tackle on the board. Austin, what are you thinking here?
Part of me likes McConkey. I'm higher on McConkey than others are. I think that he can actually play outside receiver in the NFL. Some of the secondary options here are also nice too. I like Kool-Aid a lot. I like Sanderson a lot. I don't know if I want him at the top of the second round necessarily. Could be a spot too where the Pats are trading back if they think all of these receivers are a little bit close. But rather than throwing that into the mix, I don't know. My lean's McConkey here though, but I could also defer to the consensus. Where's your guys' head at
here? I like Ladd McConkey. My issue here is that slot receiver is the one spot in New England where I feel kind of good on offense, or that running back. And I think Ladd has outside ability, but I don't know it necessarily. He doesn't have that great history of production. He has some injuries and just I like Ladd. If this is the Tom Brady Patriots, I think you're taking Ladd when he and Brady will figure it out together and we can take some of the risks here. I get a little bit more concerned when it's a first-year quarterback like Drake May and the wide receiver room in New England has. I've come around more on a guy like Keon Coleman here just to get a big body, and I think there's a couple of big bodies you can pick, but he's the one who I think I like the most at this spot, which I didn't think I'd be saying 2 months ago.
Yeah, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't do Keon Coleman at 34. I like the idea of drafting the best player available. I think Kool-Aid might be the best player on the board.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's number one on the board PFF, but that's,
I don't hate that at all.
And even if you want to do someone like Jackson Powers Johnson, I know it's not necessarily a need for the Patriots, but I do wonder, Yeah, well, it's too early for that. I don't know what I'm
Go
talking about.
down here. Let's scroll down here. What do we got? Let's see. We have some other options, maybe.
Yeah.
We could
You could
also
really
sorry.
shore up the QB spot and take Michael Penix.
Kingsley, I kind of like. I kind of like Kingsley.
Yeah, we could also
potentially.
look into trading back, but I don't necessarily want to do that. We could, but
There's Adisa Isaac, the edge rusher from Penn State, I think is a little interesting.
Yeah, part of me
if
feels
you-
maybe even Sumatia might be a better pick than corner. I like him too, but that's another. Are you bringing in a developmental tackle?
right.
Or do you want
Right.
like guys that can win now? I think you lean best player available here too. I think I think we have to identify consensus who we feel is the best player available. Obviously, PFFC's Kool-Aid here. I think Jackson Powers Johnson is a type of first round player. Obviously, he would. David Andrews is still there, but I find myself if we're coming out of this and we're taking a decent Isaac, we're like just forcing need, are we not?
Right. I agree with you on that.
Maybe. I do. I think Kool-Aid's the best player available. If we're gonna talk corner, I think a guy like Laster is a little bit interesting just because he's physical and maybe you want that opposite Christian Gonzalez. But then again, I think we're kind of
I think Kool-Aid can
missing
be
the point
physical
of best
too,
player.
though. I don't know. He's got
Yeah,
like,
and
I
it's
like
like
Kool-Aid. I'm coming back to Kool-Aid, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's
like that with
live a
Christian
little.
Gonzalez.
Let's do Kool-Aid a little bit. Now you get a corner that play on the outside. With Christian Gonzalez, I think it's fascinating. And again, who knows if it actually works out or not, but theoretically you're taking the best player in the draft, the best player available in the draft. And so now you get to a situation where you're in the third round, you're at 68, and you have to take either a tackle or a wide receiver. And you might be stretching for one of those guys, but to me, you have to take one of those guys.
Filter by wide receiver. Obviously, I see Polk there. I'm not a Polk. I'm not in love with Polk.
At 68, we got Polk, we got Tez Walker, we got Javon Baker, Johnny Wilson, Jamari Thrash, Malachi Corley, Brendan Rice. I think that's about as far as deep into the draft as
What's rough is the type of receiver the Pats need is not the one you can get in the third. It's someone that you do kind of have to take at the top of the second. But I didn't really like – I'm not a big Keon Coleman fan. I would have rather had McCarthy there, but I do agree the injuries are a piece that scares me. And then who's remaining here at tackle? Maybe tackle is where there's value, which I know that means we're going to the bottom of the barrel for wide receivers. But
I think
Amagashi.
Amagashi
already off the board.
Yeah, so Blake Fisher, Dominic Pooney, Matt Gonsalves, Christian Jones. I think Fisher and Pooney are the only ones you're thinking about here, and Fisher's rough because he's been a right tackle only, and that's the one spot on this line where I think you feel good if you're New England.
Yeah. Well, and Pooney may not even play tackle in the NFL. So,
same with Gonsalves. Christian Jones is a right tackle.
That's concerning. How do you feel about Malachi Corley, Austin? Every year
I like him a lot.
Every year I pick a guy to be like my guy. That's gonna be like a day two guy, that's my guy this year.
Gives me some Pop Douglas vibes, same kind of like jitterbug type. I think there's some people who've comped him to Devo Samuel, little rich, but I think that could be. I think my favorite thing about him is he's a good yak player. 70 career missed tackles. He's high yak in terms of not just running away from guys, but he runs through guys. I think that is the type of toughness that is exciting, and also as with the kick return rules changing, I know that he could maybe even have some value in that spot. Well, because I do think we're going to start to see the returner builds become a little bit closer to running backs than these kind of like larger speed.
Yeah,
type.
and that's the fascinating thing because it's almost going to be more like a wide receiver position because you get it with not a lot of room to run, and can you break a tackle or two, right? So,
what are our thoughts on Tez Walker?
Man, So when I watched the Drake May tape, my first takeaway was I don't want any of these weapons. And then I watched Tez Walker at the Senior Bowl, and that kind of reinforced that takeaway for me. He's a good athlete. He's just so raw. Like you're almost putting him on the Nico Collins development plan and hoping by year 3 he turns into something. And I don't hate that at this point in the draft, but I don't love it. Like I think my issue with a lot of the receivers you're going to find at this point too is like Jalen Polk, I think is good, but I don't think he's ever going to be anything special. Like he'll be a high level number 2 contested catch zone beater type. Tez Walker is boom bust. Johnny Wilson is just like, the only physical comp for him is like Harold Carmichael. Like we don't know what this dude's going to be in the NFL. And
I think
Brendan
of him
Rice
as
is kind of in the Devontae Walker role, just probably worse all around.
Yeah, was it Hakeem Butler that came out a few years ago who we were like, oh, he's a tweener and he's going to be so great, and he just like never even played in the league.
I was so high on Hakeem Butler.
This is tough. I mean,
so I think
I like Jabari Thrash maybe a little bit, but even then, I do think we are kind of saying we are just kind of saying it's okay to have a lower ceiling on some of this. I don't know. The receiver
Thrash has good. I like Thrash's like footwork, but I don't know if he's a true. Like I feel like he's a Z in the NFL too.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like and we obviously didn't do this, but like I feel like if you're the Patriots and you did something like we did, which is take Kool-Aid at 34, right? Then you're going to a situation where you are watching the board like a hawk and you're trading up to get that tackle late in the second round, right? You're taking 68 and moving it up to get, because where did Amagaji go? At like 56 or something like that?
Yeah, 58 right there.
Coleman and Amagaji went almost back to back, 58 and 60, and
so to me, you're taking 68 and you're packaging it and getting one of those guys, in the mid to late second round, and not worrying about this situation now that we're in the third round, and so, but it is what it is. So, what do you want to do here, fellas? Do you want to take Polk? Do you want to do?
So I think we get. Do we get Polk in the building, or do we lean a different receiver here?
Well, I think the other thing with Polk is that the Patriots brought in Washington's receivers coach, so I feel like that might be a tiebreaker. But the other tiebreaker here is, we drafted Drake May, and he knows, he has that.
Yeah, but I'd rather have Polk than Tez. Let's go Polk here. Wide receivers coach is just going to turn him into a superstar. I can already see the future.
Let's do it. I love it.
All right, Jalen Polk is the pick at 68. So that's May, Kool-Aid, and Polk. 103 top on the board according to PFF. Michael Pratt, Renardo Green, Mason McCormick, Maris Liafu, and Ray Davis. I look at this. I scroll down a little. I see Matt Gonzalez at 110, and I see a experienced tackle who can play a couple different spots on the line and might only ever be a swing tackle, but is good depth. Who can play
he's one of my guys in this class. I like him a lot. I think that a lot of the underlying PFF data with him is suggestive that he could be someone that comes in and plays really well early. He's also a little bit later in his developmental curve at 23 years old, and I kind of like my tackle flyers there, especially if I'm looking for him to start a little bit earlier. And I think the value at 103, I think I would have been upset if we took him where we took Polk, but I kind of like him here.
I couldn't agree more.
I'm bringing this up so the people can see it too. Snaps by alignment. He got injured this past season, but was the primary left tackle for Pitt before then. Split between left and right tackle in 2022. And in 2021, he was primarily a right tackle, but there's snaps at left tackle and a couple at left guard in there too. So I don't know how high his ceiling is, but I do like his floor, and I think he can start week 1 next season.
And I think it makes sense. I mean, can he play left tackle? I don't know, and we won't know that until he gets into the NFL. But I think there's a chance that he can. And to get a guy at 103 that you feel like has a decently high floor can give you some run at left tackle if you can. And look, they have Chuck Okorafor, who right now is the starter at left tackle. And if Gonzalez can push him for that, great. And if he can't, then he can't. And, he is the third string tackle, and that's fine with pick 103, in my opinion.
Now let's check out receiver here. I kind of like Cornelius Johnson a little. Man, and sometimes
I'll say I'm a Michigan guy, and I'm like, man, the flashes from Cornelius Johnson are so good, but it's been so many years, and it's just been flashes.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Hard to
and
imagine him
that,
finally turning the corner, but I wouldn't mind a flashes guy here just to see if
well,
we
and
can find a
that's
way.
well, in a lot of ways, that's what Nico Collins was as a prospect too, coming out of Michigan.
Sure.
You know, better, definitely better, but a guy who had talent, and Michigan's scheme, regardless of quarterback, they just run the ball. So he didn't get as many looks. I think Cornelius Johnson's interesting. Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint from Georgia, Taj Washington, Isaiah Williams, Luke McCaffrey, top couple of receivers. I also want to point out running back, just because 3 of the top 5 on the board are running backs, and the Patriots don't have a lot of backs in the room right now. You got Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, and Isaac Guerrero there. Do you have thoughts on any of those guys?
Obviously, Guerrero is the guy who blew up the combine, could bring in a legitimate athlete. I wonder how much they want Antonio Gibson involved, and would he be this kind of spelling the top 2? I don't, I think I'd rather take a flyer on receiver, just given how bleak the room is. Are you guys Anthony Gould fans? I know there's some stands out there. The smaller receiver out of Oregon State.
He's
I know
fast,
he's been comped
right?
Yeah, he's fast. He's got some speed. He's got some life to him. I don't know. I think I could see Gould maybe being an option, or Cornelius Johnson, just to bring some more. Obviously, Tyquan Thornton's your speed, but I like the idea of throwing more darts at the board at receiver more than I do trying to get more guys into the running back room.
Yeah, I mean, look, but 5'8", 174 that's tough, especially when you have
and you got too many of those guys
small.
in the room.
Right.
I think the flyer on Cornelius is fine. I mean, I think that you're right. I don't know if he's going to be a Nico Collins breakout, but height, weight, speed, flashes. I mean, maybe we bet on him here, and we are on to day 3.
Yeah, I like that, and I also think it's worth remembering, when it's at least the guys in the run wolf tree don't like small receivers at all. So,
correct.
Not sure if that trend is going to continue in New England, but Cornelius Johnson's pick at 137.
I like it. And by the way, 4.44 speed is pretty good, right? It's not amazing, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And for a guy that's 6'3", 212, I like that. And again, who knows if he's ever actually going to be able to put all the pieces together, but he might be able to, and you never know.
You never know. 180, guy who jumps off the board for me right here is Jaheim Bell, who the Patriots are actually, I believe, just scheduled a top 30 visit with, and they also met with him, I believe, at the Combine, which I kind of feel like Jaheim Bell in this class is what a lot of people want JT Sanders to be. He tested so much better than JT Sanders did if you're looking for that high upside.
I also like his yak production a lot. And I think producing after the catch at the tight end position in college is usually pretty good signal for having some chops at the next level. I think Jaheim Bell is the name I look at. Another name I look at, though I don't think we should draft him, is Kamani Vidal. I don't know if you guys ever watched him at Troy, but he's the 5'5" running back muscle monster. I don't know if he's long for the league, but if the UFL sticks around, I could see him being a pretty fun player to watch.
I saw somebody tweeting some clips of him the other day. He's got some wiggle, and
he's insane. He's a fun player. I think I bet an under in betting on Troy. We'll talk about this maybe after the call. But I bet an under, and because his total rushing yards was 196 for a game, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You're telling me it's a 50-50 proposition that he goes over under 100, and the dude hit 220. I'm like, what's going on here? Who is this guy? No,
that's unbelievable.
I don't know if it's the pick, but I like Jaheim Bell. I think he's the name that pops for me, and I like him more than Tip too. I think Tip. He could be this blocker that we're looking for, but I think Bell is the better prospect.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. That's one hell of a story to say that you that you bet the under. Meanwhile, I have a future on UConn. Let me just tell you how terrible I am as a bettor here. I have a friggin' future on UConn that I placed last year, the day of the championship game, because I thought it was for the last year's championship. So I just been sitting on this future, and I was like, why are they plus 1,200? What's going on? What's happening? What did they screw something up? And then I was like, the game ended, and I'm like, wait, where's my money? And then I was like, oh my god, I'm so stupid.
Well, you're 11 minutes 30 seconds
I
away
am.
from that cashing, Pat.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? So
Yeah, yeah. I think UConn's gonna pull this off.
I don't know. They just got what's his name? Just got his third foul, I think. So that
They're still up by 13.
yeah.
So
So
pick
anyways,
193. Man, Anthony Gould stalled the board. If you want to keep hammering receiver, MJ Devonshire is a name that I've liked. Brennan Jackson is a name that I've liked. Steel Chambers, I haven't watched anything, but that is quite literally just a name that I like saying.
great name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anything
I mean, you
like
get to
here,
this
Austin?
part of the draft. Yeah, I mean, I have watched a little Steel. I mean, I don't like picking bad athletes at linebacker. But I don't know. I think that do we just keep throwing at the receiver position? Make this just an all-out competition? No, but Gould is too repetitive with who we already have.
Yeah. Two names
tough.
that jump out at me.
Go ahead.
Are Jalen Green and Hunter Norzad. Jalen Green from James Madison, and Hunter Norzad from Penn State. Jalen Green led the nation in sacks last year and missed the last 4 games of the season. Just an absolute monster. Now he's small and he played at JMU, so there's a reason why. But I don't hate taking a chance on a guy that is an elite pass rusher, even if he was at a smaller school level.
Make it happen. I like it. Let's bring this guy in. You just convinced me.
All right,
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm down.
How about that?
Yeah. All right, Jalen Green at 193. I think we got. Is it 1 or 2 picks?
One
left?
pick.
All right, this
one pick.
Yeah, this must be the last one here. All right. Let's see some of the names we got on the board. We got Dominic Lovett from Georgia, Isaiah Davis, CJ Hansen, who want to stay local and take a Holy Cross guard. Dominic Hampton.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, Hampton is one of those, length and aggression and athleticism safeties that I was talking. That's what I was thinking about when I was saying, just draft special teamers on day 3 earlier. I've drafted him before in mocks for that role. Tanner McLaughlin was a tight end who tested really well, doesn't have a ton of production. You could draft the other Tonga Valoa here just to say you did it.
Man, brutal. I don't know. Holy Cross kind of calling my name here. Adding some local talent. Let's see the size weight here. What do we have? 6'6", 305. Richard Senior. I'm hearing good things. I like where we're heading.
All right, I'm down with it. I'm 100% on board with just giving you the last pick and letting you choose whoever the hell you want. And CJ Hansen sounds great to me.
Yeah, we'll take a Crusader and add him. So the final draft here for New England as it loads in: Drake May at 3, Kool-Aid McKinstry at 34, Jalen Polk at 68, Matt Gonsalves at 103, Cornelius Johnson at 137, Jaheim Bell at 180, Jalen Green at 193, and CJ Hansen at 231.
In hindsight, I think people are going to be upset at how we tackled corner, receiver and tackle, and we're going to need to bang.
They already are. The chat is active.
Oh, Chad is furious.
The chat is livid. We're gonna have to prove it here. This is another bet on culture. We talked about this. We're betting on culture. We're betting on scheme here. Doing that process again. The more I think the Patriots should be hoping for a trade back opportunity. I know maybe even the chat won't like that. This roster isn't good.
Right.
They need more They need more swings of the bat. They need more at bats to improve this. If they can be a team that adds one of a Penix or Nix in the second, but is able to pick up some extra picks, I don't know. It starts to make me like this a little bit more because it's so hard when you're looking at they probably got to go tackle here, and it's in the 4th round. That is not how good teams win. That's not how good teams build their rosters up.
Yeah.
Well, I think in some ways the ideal here for New England, especially if they don't really like this quarterback class, if you can get 11 and 23 from Minnesota, you can potentially come out of the 1st round with a guy you like at receiver and a guy you like at tackle. And think you've got 2 good bets to fix those. And then when you get to 34, you can take best player available. And you can go any direction.
Yeah, because imagine they get 11 and 23 from Minnesota. They get Fashanu at 11 and at 23. Say that is as far as Brian Thomas Jr. goes. I mean, you're looking at a much better situation in terms of a
100%.
roster. Now, obviously, you have
Yeah.
not solved the quarterback problem, but it's not. I don't think kicking the can down the road in the first year of the Wolf era, the first year of the Mayo era, while the roster is still reeling and you have all this cap space next year. I continue to come back to that same note, where I just feel like that
Yeah.
maybe is the better option.
Well, and I think too, like in our draft situation, even if you take May at 3, the trade back at 34, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because if you can move back to
find a
that
partner,
mid 40s, right, and pick up, either if it's a 4th round pick, but if you can move back, and it probably would be more, it might be like mid 40s and a 3rd round pick. Now you're talking about you can draft a wide receiver or tackle in that 40 spot, and then draft another one of those guys in the 3rd round. And now you're not scrambling like we were at 68 to be like, who the hell can we take at 68, right? And that's kind of the situation we were in, right? And so instead of and we had talked about it during the draft, instead of necessarily trading up at 68 to get the guy we wanted, you trade back from 34, pick up an extra pick or two, and then you're able to kind of, get more guys in there. We were kind of looking at 34 saying, we don't love any of the guys here at 34, but we would have been happy with them at 42 or 45. And then that would be a situation where the trade back makes sense there,
And I did a mock recently where I traded back from 34, then moved up from 68 and came away with, I think, Jordan Morgan and Keon Coleman as my 2 picks, and one's in the 40s, one in the 50s. And I feel like that's a closer spread value-wise to what New England needs than what you might get at 34 and 68 at either end of that.
I like Jordan Morgan a lot. I think with Keon Coleman, when he was being, more considered a top, a first-round type of player, I was like, I don't see it. But now that his value, I think, has slid to probably somewhere in the 2nd round, I can get on board more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's agreed. People have compared him to N'Keal Harry in some ways, which I think he's a lot more fluid of an athlete than N'Keal Harry ever was. I think his lower body is a lot more flexible, and you just have a higher ceiling as a route runner when that is, what you got going on.
The comp I have is Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker, but that dream fully realized. People forget that Devontae Parker was the number 9 overall player on Mike Mayock's board in the 2015 NFL draft. I think that Parker, big, not necessarily super fast, but could just won a lot of balls at Louisville. And I think that back then, I think there was less of an understanding of being that good in contested catch situations is a little bit more volatile than people think, just because so much goes into what percentage of your targets are contested and all that kind of stuff. I think with Coleman, he does, in my opinion, win a lot of contested catch situations, but he also gets open oftentimes by being a very physical, strong, bully ball type of receiver. There's a difference between winning at the catch point because you're strong and winning at the catch point because the guy that was on you fell down because you're just shouldering the load. So I don't know. I like Keon Coleman more than I like Devontae Parker coming out, but that's the kind of caliber prospect that it's crazy. 10 years ago, people saw Parker coming out and like, oh my gosh, this guy could be who he is. So I think Keon Coleman's the key player on day 2.
Yeah.
Well, I think you talk about Parker, and for New England fans, that brings up bad memories because we got the version of Parker after all the injuries and sold as the number 1 guy. And people forget that he was a number 1 guy at one point. He did have 1,200 yards in a season. When he didn't have the injury issues or anything like that, he was a pretty good player out there. And if you got, that type of production and you don't get the injuries from a guy like Keon Coleman, if you take that in the 2nd round, that's a slam dunk.
Absolutely cooked Stefon Gilmore multiple times when he was on the Patriots. Just cooked him up. And so,
Devontae Parker is one of the reasons the Patriots didn't get a bye in 2019.
Right.
He and Gesicki that game.
Yeah.
So, I think, and the other part of it too is that I also look at it and say, okay, fine. You don't love him there. And I don't blame you for not loving the guy, but you're also talking about the mid-2nd round as opposed to, what was Parker taken? 11th overall or something like that? So there's a big difference between where he was being taken and where this guy now is potentially being taken. And I think that's what we're talking about, right? And Devontae Parker, obviously for the Patriots, stunk, right? And for the Dolphins, for the most part, never realized that, that potential. But that doesn't mean that Keon Coleman, who looks a little bit like him and plays kind of similar to him, wouldn't reach his potential, right? And so I think that's one of the things for me where it's like I don't mind taking a risk on a guy like that, especially if it's a second round pick, right? And I can look at it and say I can see that where he can be successful in the NFL. I don't know if he ever will be, but I can see where he could do it.
Yeah. Well, then the other issue, if we're talking about Patriots receivers they've picked in the N'Keal Harry comp here, one of the reasons that the N'Keal Harry thing looks so bad is because you've got N'Keal Harry versus AJ Brown versus DK Metcalf versus Deebo Samuel, and I don't know if we're gonna get some of those hits on day 2 in this draft. Like, I like the depth of this receiver class, but I also feel like there's a lot of guys with red flags. Like Xavier Legette has red flags. Troy Franklin is skinny and has drop issues. Ladd McConkey has his injury issues. Jermaine Burton is a guy who has been really hot and cold in his career. Ricky Pearsall and Roman Wilson are very much like, they've been like low volume at points. They're older guys, and it's like, I don't know if there's a prospect like some of those guys on day 2 that's sitting around. A young guy who's a really, really good athlete with production. Coleman, I think, would be 21 for his entire rookie year too, unless the Patriots, got into the playoffs. So,
right.
I like him a lot more than some of those other guys.
Yep, agreed. All right, this has been a ton of fun, Austin. Is there anyone else that you're like, ooh, I forgot to talk about this guy, but I have strong opinions about him? And maybe even it's more than one guy, but I don't want to let you leave without being like, oh, you got to make sure you pay attention to this.
Getting some takes off.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not there on the conversation about Neighbors being better or Odunze being better. He is the best receiver in this class. I think he's the best red zone threat. I think he's the best chain mover. I think he's the best deep threat. I think he's better in contested situations. I think he's the most polished. I think he's the best route runner. I think that it can be easy as we get into this pre-draft process, and people are like, what flavor receiver you want? I want the best one, and Marvin Harrison's that. Yeah. I honestly think that my first mock draft ever was in 2014 when I started my own draft website a long time ago. And as long as I've been doing this, he would be the one I'm most surprised by not working out. I think I would have to reevaluate everything that I look at the receiver position if he's not someone who's going to be a consistent 1,000, even 1,200 plus yard type of receiver. The comp I had for him was AJ Green. I think he could be that freaking good in the NFL. Now, I really do like Neighbors. I really do like Rome Odunze. I think there's a chance all 3 of those guys go in the top 6, which would be for the first time ever. We have not seen that happen. 3 receivers in the top 6. So it's a really good receiver class, and I still think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best. Right? That, I think, is one of the things I'm definitely banging the table on. In terms of, other parts of this class, I am Caleb Williams, number 1 overall guy. I think Drake Mays 2, J. Daniels 3, J.J. McCarthy 4. And then after that, I'm looking at those guys in the second round. That's Michael Penix and Bo Nix. For offensive tackle, I think Joe Alt is up there for me, and I think he's going to be the number 1 guy. But I think after that, I think it does kind of depend on the flavor. I think there are going to be a lot of tackles coming out of the first round in the top 16. Corner, interesting class, right? Is it Cooper? Some people have Cooper DeJean, cornerback 1. Some people have Kool-Aid. Some people have Terrion Arnold, the other Alabama corner. Nate Wiggins has gotten some love, the CB1. Corner will be the one where there are going to be some people getting burned, right? Someone's going to be like, oh, man, I took the second picked corner in this class or the third picked corner in this class in the first round. I think it's hard to imagine that the 4 or 5 guys that do come out of it end up being legitimate players. I see some bust potential with that group.
Going back to Marvin Harrison Jr., is there a world where you're in New England and you're sitting there at 3 and you're just like, we're not letting this guy buy? We don't have the quarterbacks. We got trade offers, but we're just going to take Marvin, fix wide receiver, and go on to 34?
That would be pretty nuts. I don't hate it. I don't know. I don't hate it. I think that if you have a trade offer from the Vikings that includes 11 and 23 and some change, I think it's worth it given where they are in their timeline, right? Yeah. I think it makes more sense. If you don't like the trade up, but if Jaden Daniels on the board, I think Antonio Pierce is going to be calling them until the answer. Like, it's going to be a very, very rowdy group of people that I think are interested in Jaden Daniels. And I think it's also going to be, if Drake May's there, I think they're going to have some calls as well. So I don't know. I think it's hard. I think it's quarterback at 3 or trade out. I would be surprised if they stay put and take Marvin Harrison Jr. or any of the other top 9 quarterbacks.
All right, one more question for you. Well, for me at least. You trade with Minnesota. You get 11 and 23. How do you feel about Michael Penix at 23?
Not personally a huge fan. I like Bo Nix over Penix. I worry about the injuries. I worry about the late breakout. I worry about him being a little bit of a vertical lead to 3 NFL receivers merchant in some ways. A lot of his best throws are vertical shots down the football field, your post, your corners, your obviously your go balls, and like Rome Odunze made him right on a lot of those. Right now, I'm not saying he's not an accurate thrower of the football. I'm not saying some of those deep balls that he had specifically in the playoffs weren't that impressive. I think that where I want to see him win more, if I'm going to take him as high as 23, is short. No, not even short. The intermediate level of the field, throwing it between the pipes, and actually being that kind of quarterback. Those are the types that I want in the first round. I'd much rather wait. And people are like, fifth year option. I'd much rather wait and take him in the second if I do like Penix and rather and then build up this roster again, because you don't want to put Penix in this situation either. Definitely not, right? Even if you do stay at 11, the top tackle available or the top receiver available, I don't think necessarily that's enough, especially for a lesser project, right? A smaller, an older project to come in and try and compete for a spot.
That's a good point.
And I think Penix is a guy too, where depending on how the NFL views him, you might be able to let him go at 34, like not take him at 34, and I don't know if he gets to 68, but move up from 68 a little bit to go get him if you like him. I see an older guy with injury issues at the quarterback position, and I feel like that's the kind of guy who slides on draft day. I don't think, especially if teams fill QB needs on day one, if whatever teams were high on him filled the QB need on day one, it could be, a long slide for him in round 2, maybe even to round 3.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Austin, this has been a ton of fun, man. Thank you so much for coming through. I really appreciate it. One of my favorite draft guys just out there, and honestly, one of my favorite guys out there. You're just an interesting dude. I love the storytelling. You're just a passionate guy, and I'm excited to listen to you on more podcasts. Hopefully in the coming months and years, and we'd love to have you back on here at some point as well to talk Patriots. And I'm not. Were you in attendance? You're not everyone knows this, but are you still a Raiders fan, even though they're in Vegas instead of Oakland?
Still a Raiders fan. It's one of the things my dad unfortunately handed down to me. I can't avoid it. It's inescapable. I am excited by the Raiders' newfound energy. Am I worried that Tom Telesco is the GM? Yes. Am I worried about the roster? Sure. Will I still continue on this run of despair and depression? Yes. It's an unavoidable thing. You don't get to pick your fandoms. Right.
That's a great point. We were just blessed to be Patriots fans, for us, and that's the way it goes, right? And were you in the building for the Chandler Jones curb stomp of Mac Jones, the Jacoby Myers pass back?
I wish I was. I was not in the building. I've been in the building for some absurd Raiders moments, but a lot of those were in the early 2010s. I was there for Jamarcus Russell's first pass. I was there for the Terrell Pryor
93-yard
quarterback run touchdown. I was also there for seeing that meme of the 76-yard kick from Sebastian Janikowski before the half. I was there for that one. Had some fun ones, man. I think that Raiders Stadium is gonna suck now that the A's are leaving Oakland too. I'm pretty bummed out about it. That Oakland Stadium going down, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it's wild stuff.
And they're not even they're going to Sacramento. They're not even going to take the name. They're just going to be the A's. That's like one of the most disrespectful things I've ever seen in sports.
It's that's rough. Yeah, it's rough. It's all bad over there.
Yeah, I hate it, and the owner sucks, and it's just tough. It's hard, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Anyways, well, thanks again, Austin. Before you go, just let everyone know where they can see you and read you and hear you and everything else.
Go to theringer.com, check out the Ringer Podcast Network, and continue to listen to this show. I obviously enjoy coming on. Thanks, guys.
Love it. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys back Wednesday night this time, not Thursday night, Wednesday night with another special guest. So we have that going for you. We'll take care, guys, and we'll talk to you Wednesday.